as we prepare for the Pesach holiday, I want to point out to you that there are real heroes of the Pesach story that we might not even know about because they're not mentioned in the Haggadah. And yet, without them, we would not have survived. And what they brought to the Jewish people and gave us is something that we could use now in massive doses. We're living through very trying and challenging times as Americans and as Jews. There's hardly a day when we don't hear bad news. I have this article that was written by David Brooks entitled, "America is Falling Apart at the Seams." And he teachers are facing a rising tide of disruptive behavior. The drug epidemic just keeps getting worse. CNN ran a story, hate crime reports in U.S. surged the highest level. The number of gun purchases has soared. As Americans' hostility toward one another seems to be growing, their care for one another seems to be falling. And nowhere does anyone seem to have anything positive to say about the future. This article in the recent Sunday edition of the Washington Post, from bank runs to a credit crunch, the financial future looks bleak. And what should I say about us as Jews? Constant stories about anti-Semitism here in America. Who would have thought? And in Israel, everything you hear about Israel these days is summed up in this headline from an Israeli newspaper: Netanyahu is leading Israel to civil war. And here comes the holiday of Pesach, and we're supposed to be in a festive mood, and we're supposed to rejoice. How can we when we keep hearing such bad news? And that's where our Pesach heroes come in. We are told, B'schar nashim tzidkanios nigalu avoseinu mimitzrayim. In the merit of Jewish women, we were redeemed from Egypt. You'd never know it from reading the Haggadah. No mention of women. And yet our sages are telling us that it's because of them, we were redeemed. What did they do to deserve such praise? They gave us hope. You see, the men grew despondent and gave up. We are told, the children of Israel groaned from the burden of work, and they cried out. They gave up. Paro had decreed that all of the male children should be killed. And so Amram, who was one of the leaders of the Jewish people, said, there's no sense in bringing children into this world. And so we're told that he and all the men divorced their wives because there was no hope for the future. And you know what happened? A woman came along, a woman named Miriam, the daughter of Amram, and said, I know you feel downtrodden and your self-esteem has been destroyed. But if we have no more children, then Paro is victorious for sure. And so he convinced his father to remarry his wife, and they gave birth to a man named Moshe. And you know what else? All the other women, they prettied themselves up. They dressed themselves up and put on whatever makeup they needed by using their mirrors. And then they went out and seduced their husbands. And in so doing, they perpetuated the Jewish people. Because of a Miriam, because of maidservants, Shifra and Puah, and because of all the other women who did not give in to despair, who practiced hope. You know, we could use a massive dose of that these days. I think back to a speech that was delivered in 1991 by Avram Harman, who was a former ambassador to the United Nations and president of the Hebrew University from Israel, a distinguished, eloquent spokesman for our people. And Dr. Harman said, and I quote, "If I have one regret in all that I have done for this country, it is the many times over the years that I addressed Jews and said to them, this is the most challenging time in history. This is the most dangerous time in Israel's history." I've said that so many times over the years in 48 and in 67 with the PLO and Lebanon and the Intifada. I regret having said it because the truth is, right now is the most difficult and challenging time in the history of Israel. That was in 1991, and that's the way it is with our people. We always think that today is the worst. So let me remind you, Israel survived its war of liberation where it lost 6,000 people, 1% of its population, comparable to America today, losing 3 million people in a war. We survived the Yom Kippur War where we lost 2,500 of our best and finest. We survived terrorist attacks, bus bombings, suicide bombs. And what are we today? We are a country that is a source of ingenuity for global partnerships in arts and education and health and high tech and biotech and energy and environmental tech. Israel sizzles with creativity. And you know something else? According to polls, Israeli people are amongst the happiest people in the world. You know what? Because they have a national anthem, which is called Hatikva, the hope. Let us learn from the women who left Egypt. In the Torah, we're told something fascinating about it. We're told that after Moshe and the children of Israel sang the magnificent song at the sea, the Torah says Miriam, the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took her tambourines in her hand, and all the women went forth after her with tambourines and with dances. Yes, the women also sang a song, but where'd they get the tambourines from? Come hear my Yiska sermon and you'll find out more. But let me tell you for now, the Jews left Egypt so quickly they didn't have enough time for the bread to rise. But women took the time to pack their tambourines because they had faith that someday they would be singing. As Americans and as Jews, may we all keep this in mind. And then for all of us, the words of Haggadah will ring true. Hotzianu me abdus lecherus, me yagon lesimcha, me evel leyontav, ume afela leor gadol. God will lead us from slavery to freedom, from bondage to redemption, from misery to joy, from mourning to a holiday, and from deep darkness to great light. Shabbat Shalom and Chag Sameach.